Welcome back to WAC. Wide Angle Conversations is a visual media podcast created by Stacey Barron and me, Rosette Simitian. Before we get started, I want to flag this episode for potentially disturbing themes like mental illness, eating disorders, violence, and sexual violence. Today we are joined by the UC Davis English Department's very own Ruben Zecena. Ruben is an assistant professor whose scholarship focuses on contemporary migrant narratives with specific attention to the survival practices of queer and trans migrants. His specialties include Latinx studies, queer of color critique, and transnational American studies. His work is informed by his experiences as a formerly undocumented migrant from El Salvador. For today's show, Ruben has chosen Emerald Fennell's sensational film Saltburn, which caused quite a social media frenzy when it was released in November of 2023. Saltburn tells the story of the mysterious Oliver, played by Barry Keoghan, a seemingly working-class scholarship student attending Oxford University in the very retro year of 2006. Oliver finds himself enfolded into the popular crowd when Felix, played by Jacob Elordi, takes him under his wing and invites him to his aristocratic family's country house, Saltburn. There, Oliver experiences the invasive curiosity of Felix's parents, played by Rosamund Pike and Richard E. Grant, the hostile suspicion of Felix's cousin Farley, played by Archie Madekwa, and the disdainful interest of Felix's sister Venetia, played by Alison Oliver. As Oliver tries to ingratiate himself within the Catton family, Felix realizes that there might be more to his new friend than it seems, a realization that sets off a violent chain of events culminating in Oliver's dominion over Saltburn. So, Ruben, thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you for bringing this rich film visual text to the conversation. Is there anywhere that you want to start in particular with Saltburn?
First, ouch, retro 2006. I was like, oh no. Well, I guess I kind of wanted to start and you already started addressing it, the social media frenzy, because when you asked about a film, I was like, oh, this will be good. At the same time, it could be bad because of all the multiple takes the film got. But I guess I wanted to start with because there's a lot of people that were saying I don't know why this got such attention, it's a great film. For me, I just found it an entertaining film. I wasn't really looking to be oh my god, in terms of form or what the film is doing. I was just this is a stunning, fun, a little thirsty film that I just enjoy. How did you react? Because it was just such a thing, and it was back in the holidays, right? Because I just remember watching it for Christmas, out of all things.
Yeah, totally. I guess, did you watch it in theaters?
No, I did Prime when it was on Prime.
Oh, okay. So you heard kind of the hubbub before. So I watched it before the hubbub, which I think increased my enjoyment of it the first time. I do think I've seen it twice since. So I've seen it a total of 3 times, I guess. Yeah. And I think with each rewatch, I liked it less. But the first time, I kind of went into it not knowing anything. I didn't look at the full trailer. I just saw the teaser. And I think with marketing, they were quite good at just teasing the story. But I remember watching it in theaters, and there was just such a fun audience reaction that I think increased my enjoyment of the movie. But yeah, I think if I had heard all the social media stuff first, I do think I would have been all right, this is just fun, but it's not that big of a deal. I kind of agree. And I think the context colored how I viewed it.
Yeah. Because I think, I also had the same experience, because I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, oh my God, this was so fun. The second time I was like, okay, it's an okay movie. And I think the spectacle of the beautiful cinematography, the director did amazing in terms of the visuals. It's just it keeps you watching and it keeps you entertained. But in terms of is the movie radical or doing anything that radical? I don't think so. But it's fun. It is what it is.
Totally. And I think that's so true. I don't think it's actually radical at all. I think it's really much embedded in other literary and film traditions. Stuff like the Gothic. It was very Bram Stoker's Dracula references. Very much there's a lot of queer academia in British literature and film, stuff like Brideshead Revisited. So I think it's honestly, if anything, a very traditional British film in a way. Yeah. But coming or being delivered to the audience in a very entertaining and visually pleasing way, for sure.
Because if we think about with genre, in terms of the Gothic, we kind of know the story already while watching it. The house itself is Saltburn itself is kind of a character for the film. The vampire scene, the very obvious references. But it's kind of a movie that we kind of already know what it's about, even though it's doing a mishmash of all of these stories that we already know.
There were definitely certain films that were like meant for like shock value, right? The bathtub scene,
Oh
the vampire scene to an extent, the grave scene. I guess, what do you think about like those like punctuated moments in the overall like film? Or do you think that kind of it was just kind of like a gimmick to kind of just shock, or how did you interpret like those
Well, to excuse my language, the
things?
fucking the bathtub,
Yeah.
the fucking the grave.
Yeah.
See, that one was the one that actually, that's the big unexpected one.
Yeah.
Like, cause for me, like the bathtub one, like the slurping of the bathtub water, I was like, okay, like I see you. Like I was like, whatever. But then the fucking the grave was interesting because that's like the no.
Yeah,
Like,
no, for sure.
yeah, that was the no.
On the spectrum of like bathtub to the grave desecration, yeah, for sure.
And it showed his kind of melancholic but definitely complicated relationship to Felix. This like mutual love and hate. I thought it was interesting because when I was rewatching it, when he's doing his like narration of what happened, he was like, I would not say I was in love with him, I loved them, and it's like in the past tense. But like I thought it was like an interesting way, like the grave scene kind of makes sense in terms of him trying to grieve this thing that he loved in the past that he is always trying to consume. And now I'm thinking of psychoanalysis. But like it's like I think it does depict like this loved in the past tense, this idea that he's like fucking the grave, to kind of like not necessarily like let the loss go, but to like incorporate the loss into his body in a
consummate
definitely the consummation scene. Were you shocked by any of the
I feel like the build up to each was actually really well done. Like I feel like the build up to the bathwater was very like you knew it was coming before. If anything, I feel like the grave was also the most shocking, and sometimes like some of Rosamund Pike's one-liners were really shocking. It was Elspeth had like the most amazing one-liners. If I could, I would just like rewatch it and just like with that intention of just writing down everything she says. That's so fun.
What was your favorite Elspeth moment?
Oh, I think I really, upon recently rewatching it, I really like that part where she talks about Blur's Common People and how she would hang out with the band. And she was like, everyone thought the song was about me, but she's like, she came from Greece, she had a thirst for knowledge. I've never wanted to know anything in my life. And I thought that was like one of the better ones. But again, it's hard to pick just one because they're so clever. Do you have a favorite Rosamund Pike or Elspeth one-liner?
For me, it was, what was her friend, Pamela?
Poor dear Pamela.
Yeah, poor dear Pamela. Like, she died, she'll do anything for attention. Like that was like awful, by far my favorite. I do love the one that you reference in the sense that she is so oblivious and so self-centered that she really will not understand why people think that the lyric was about her.
Yeah, no, totally.
But this like she continues to say, I'm not interested in anything. I'm not interested in anything.
Totally.
But she definitely was like my favorite character and probably everyone's like favorite character.
That's valid for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of Oliver's arc and kind of how the story, there's like this frame story that's happening where Oliver is recounting everything that happened. But there's also this like twist kind of thing at the end where you realize Oliver has orchestrated a lot of what has happened already. Whereas when we're initially kind of following the story, we think things are happening to Oliver and he's responding. So I guess, what did you think about the twist?
Yeah, I mean, unreliable narrator, just because he just withheld the information until the very end. I mean, I actually know I was able to see some of the clues in the rewatch. I was like, oh, okay, this is where he was. Or, you know, like when he was talking to Elspeth and being like, oh, yeah, Pamela, have you noticed that she's kind of like emotionally manipulative? And they were just talking about how perceptive he was. Like you can kind of see that, you know, he is kind of like the mastermind behind the show. But the twist, I was kind of sad. I was hoping it will end when Felix died, actually. I don't think the twist was needed. Yeah,
I think the pacing kind of just became a little bit like sluggish after that point. And I agree. I don't even think it was like that satisfying. I think they did like this kind of like flashback sequence, and it was supposed to be like this moment of epiphany for the audience. But I feel like it wasn't even that like surprising that it was happening. And I do agree. I think like the death of Felix would have been a much more powerful way to end it for sure.
And I guess for me, like in horror, like I'm just like, don't reveal the monster. Like leave it there. Like
Totally.
have it creep
It
you
would have been
out.
creepier, right, if we hadn't known. Because Oliver Barry Keoghan does a great job of being creepy, I think, as Oliver.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's kind of like we know that likely he has a hand in this. But it's just like, yeah, don't reveal the monster at the end. Let the monster be in the creepy corner.
Totally.
Like,
yeah. Even just like him giving the wine bottle to Oliver, to Felix, and then like throwing up later. Like the hints are there. It's like already eerie enough. But yeah, I think with horror, I agree. Like less is more for sure.
Yeah. I also wanted to know, like, what did you think of, like, because there was, like, so much commentary on this being, like, an Eat the Rich film. Like, that was, like, the most, like the thing I continue to see is, like, this is an Eat the Rich film.
Yeah. I disagree because Oliver isn't rich. Or Oliver isn't poor, right? Oliver isn't working class. And even if he were, like, I wonder how that would, like, change if that would change it, how that would change it. But I think such as it is, knowing that Oliver is a middle class, like comfortable middle class person, kind of pretending to be working class as he like starts at Oxford, which is already kind of a strange thing to do. And we can kind of think about why he maybe does that. But I don't think it is because it is like from a place of the upwardly mobile, wanting this aristocratic wealth. I also think to an extent, like I'm not sure how much the idea of Eat the Rich applies with these aristocratic, like landed gentry families. Like I was actually looking up the history of the castle that they used, Drayton House, to model Saltburn off of, and that's where they filmed it. And it was built in like 1328. That was such a long time ago, and it's been inherited in the same family since like 1361. Wow. Yeah. So that's like the type of money that's like not even, that's like a different category than just rich to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. What did you think?
Also same, like I think the fact that, you know, they even show one moment when he was pretending that he couldn't pay for the round of shots. And then you saw that
he
like
had the bills,
yeah, he had the bill. So it kills the fantasy of the Eat the Rich narrative, just because it's like it can't be Eat the Rich when he is in fact not actually poor, but he's just playing onto the desires of the family, and possibly perhaps his own desires. But yeah, I also think that it's not an Eat the Rich narrative simply by the fact that he's not poor. Totally. And yeah, and I think the film was more invested in teasing out like these desires, and kind of like Elspeth, she lives in her fantasy, and that's okay. And like we enjoy her fantasy. Totally. But yeah, but I think like the film maybe was perhaps more framed as a class critique than it might be.
Absolutely. And I think like you've mentioned consumption, and I do think sexual consumption and material consumption, because in some ways Elspeth and Felix are also trying to consume this like poor working class kid's story as well. Like I think, and I mean, I don't like, this is where like the performances were like a little bit too much for me, but I think they were like very clearly trying to like spell out, oh, these people are very interested in hearing like this like awful details of Oliver's like childhood or whatever, right? And I think there's like that kind of consumption. And so when Oliver in turn tries to consume the family in like various ways, that's the power struggle happening.
Is there a character that you dislike?
I don't think I disliked any of them. I think Oliver is certainly creepy and off-putting. And I wondered to like what extent like seeing the story from his point of view like immediately like sympathizes the audience, or makes him simpatico to the audience. But yeah, did you dislike a character?
You know what? Yeah, because Oliver, I also don't like dislike him, and I think in a way like he was able to see the family for what it was, because he's like, I hated all of you the whole time. And it was like interesting to see like this like but he was like grounded in his own way. For me, I didn't like Farley sometimes.
Okay.
In a way, I do appreciate that he knows what he wants and he'll play the part. Just because, like, you know, the scene where Farley is doing karaoke, and obviously he was trying to make fun of Felix, but it was kind of like Farley, like, he's playing the part,
Mhm.
and like he even mentions race at
Mhm.
one point.
Mhm.
But for me, it was kind of like, I don't want to say whitewashed
Mhm.
character, but
Mhm.
definitely somebody that is conscious of, in order to play the part, I
Mhm.
really need to commit to the part.
Mhm.
So there was something like icky for me about
Mhm.
Farley. But at the same time, I do know what he was going for. So it's like a
Mhm.
complicated one with Farley.
Yeah.
But yeah, Farley was the one character I was like, "Ah, I don't know how I feel about you yet."
Yeah, I see that for sure. So spoilers at this point. But Oliver's like murder of the Catton family.
Yeah.
How did you like? What did you think of that? I feel like, in some ways, I think of the violence that the Catton family is like complicit in is so hidden, but also like I'm very conscious of it as I'm watching it. Whether it's like the violence that has gone through their inheritance of this property, or even just like the casual violence of kicking poor dear Pamela out to the point where she goes and like perishes, right? Or going through a bunch of footmen and stuff like that, and circling through people and using people in this way. I think I'm very conscious of that violence, and I think there's like this strong juxtaposition between like the violence of this aristocratic wealth and the violence of Oliver, like literally killing them. And so I guess my question that the Emerald Fennell made such a spectacle of those like acts of murder at the end as well, and dedicated like that time to it that we think is maybe extraneous. But like, what did you think of those like scenes of murder?
I mean, we see the blood in the bathtub. The Elspeth one was sad just because she liked them and trusted him so
Mm-hmm.
much. And if I remember right, like he narrates it as kind of like they were like these poor dogs that were just like
Mm-hmm.
sleeping, and they're not used to dealing with a beast. Like
Right.
they're not natural beasts.
Right.
And I think, yeah, in a way, like obviously the family is toxic and
Mm-hmm.
horrible in their own ways. And I think they were comfortable. And that's why they didn't see things coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even at one point, like they narrate like treating people as toys, because I think it's Venetia that's kind of like, oh yeah, you're just the new toy for the summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so the violence, yeah, I think the film in a way does make you feel bad for the family,
Mm-hmm.
in the way in which things were structured, in the sense that they were not aware and Felix was the one that was aware,
Mm-hmm.
which again, which is why I'm just like, I'm not sure it's an eat the rich narrative, because
Mm-hmm.
personally, I actually end up feeling bad for the family.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's true. Yeah.
yeah. Remember the shot when Felix is dead on the ground, and you can kind of see he has like angel wings,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's like a minotaur statue, but the way it's angled,
Mm-hmm.
like at first I read it as kind of like fallen angel
Mm-hmm.
Felix, but then I was like, oh wait, no, minotaur. And then you can see kind of like yeah, Felix, no, Oliver was
Mm-hmm.
wearing like the horns
Mm-hmm.
for the party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can kind of see like the way in which even the film is demonstrating, or at least obviously very directly making the argument that Oliver is the beast
Mm-hmm.
and Felix was the poor angel who is innocent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, like the murdering of the family, like I
Mm-hmm.
think, and this is why again I don't think it's an eat the rich
Mm-hmm.
narrative, because for me I just like feel bad for Felix,
Mm-hmm.
because he has like all the innocence, and there were like those multiple sequences
Mm-hmm.
where you see Felix portrayed like very homoerotically,
Mm-hmm.
but also like he's always like filled with light. There's
Mm-hmm.
such attention to his body, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
this pristine body. Yeah,
That
that's why.
Minotaur reference is interesting, yeah, as I think about it, because yeah, it's the center of the labyrinth and all of that, and I'm just thinking in terms of like Greek mythology. The idea was right, like that they would I can't remember what city it was that had the Minotaur, but they would sacrifice two young people like every year or every so often, and like that kind of satiated the Minotaur's like bloodlust, right? And they had to do that to keep the Minotaur under control. And I guess like I wonder what that has to say about either Oliver as someone whose bloodlust has to be satiated by the sacrifice, or like the middle class who,
Oh.
right? Because I think a lot of it is also just like this middle class enjoyment of, and perhaps like maybe this is the critique, right? Of just like the critique of the middle class obsession with things and like things of value and like luxury and aristocrats and like just like having this unattainable ideal, right? Because there's no way you can have the same amount of wealth as like this family that's inherited this land since like the 1300s, right?
Yeah.
But just kind of like maybe that is the critique, or to an extent, right? Or maybe it's a reflection on that, what unattainable desire the upwardly mobile need to have, and like how that's translated as like this bloodlust, right?
Yeah. So kind of like the cruel optimism of the middle class.
Totally. Yeah,
I can see
absolutely.
that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that really helps because it shows like the different angle that the film is perhaps aiming for, rather than like, it's poor against the rich.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
That's
cool. It looks like we got onto something.
I know.
Yeah.
We just had like a light bulb
now
moment.
we need to rewatch it. Yeah, with that.
We're like, okay, so this is where the film is
we're
going.
helping you out, Emerald. Yeah. But yeah. Okay. Was there anything like visually you want to talk about like the film?
Oh my God, I love the blood in the bathtub.
Okay.
Like it just reminds me of like the horror film It Follows. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's and you know, like when the blood is in the pool, like it was just like really stunning and gave me what I needed, like just to see blood in the water. I was just like, oh my God, this just looks pretty. Like
totally.
Yeah,
it was so pretty. I think I also really liked the 4:3 aspect ratio. That like really jumped out at me because I saw it in theaters, so I was like very aware of like, oh, there's like this much empty screen on the screen. But yeah, I was like reading or I was listening to an interview with Emerald Fennell, and she mentioned how she used that 4:3 aspect ratio to make it a square, like a smaller kind of viewfinder almost. So we have this voyeuristic feeling as the audience, in the same way that Oliver is a voyeur into this world as well.
And I mean, there's also so many scenes of him like literally being outside of the room watching Felix with other people. Like the voyeurism, the scopophilia in a sense, like it's like present like throughout the film. I also, what did you think of like the red film, like because there's different shots, like one when they're saying happy birthday to Oliver, like it's all red, and then it happens again when they're eating the blood pie or whatever, like eat your bloody pie, but it was like all red, like in both of those sequences.
Nice. I actually didn't notice that, but it immediately just makes me think of blood though, right?
For me, I think it was just like kind of like showing like the gothic trope of like the house itself having or the mansion or whatever, the estate itself having like this kind of like creepy haunting element, and that the house was also partaking perhaps in the murder in a way, just because it was like in the celebration of birth, you have like all this like red, and then I just remember the father, Sir James or whatever his name was, being like, eat your bloody pie when Farley was crying, and he's like, I don't want your American feelings, and it was like all red, and he's like bloody pie. Like I know bloody, at least for us, like I'm like, okay, bloody, not that meaning, but like the actual blood.
Right. Absolutely. I'm very down to talk about the haunted house, I guess. And I don't want to even talk about it until like maybe mentioning Duncan, the butler.
Oh my God.
What are your thoughts before I get going?
I mean, and this is where again it's a story that we already know, like the all-knowing butler, like it's kind of like, okay, yeah, but he was the one that knew not to trust Oliver from the very start. He is obviously unlikable, like Felix is like, can you please stop terrorizing my guests? But I think the butler knew the whole time, and yeah, I also wonder where he goes after.
I know.
Yeah, because he disappears.
Truly, yeah. I was like listening to, again, Emerald Fennell talk about the casting, and I honestly don't have the actor's name in front of me, but she said when they cast the butler, the actor was really good at seeming like they had lived in the house like forever, like since the 1300s. So like she wanted to kind of convey the idea that the butler had been there the entire time, and was as much like a specter in the place, like a haunting in the place, as the place itself was haunted. Another thing about the house that I really liked was that beginning sequence when Oliver first arrives and Felix walks him through. And he literally, I think, says stuff like, oh, there's grandmother's ghost or whatever, right? And walks him through the house. And it's like this very interesting, like we really are just in Oliver's point of view watching Felix move through the house. And then they finally like reach their rooms, right? And then when the film ends, it's like the reverse, right? Like we see Oliver now suddenly like dancing through the house, and it's like the same kind of camera angle, like reversing back. Do you have any thoughts about how the camera moves through the house, like with us, or moves us as the audience through the house, how the rooms and the spaces are portrayed?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of like, I know I'm like thinking back to the movie, and we kind of see like the grandiosity of the house in a way. It's like the like through the particular shots of the camera. Because right now I'm still thinking of like the Happy Birthday where like it's kind of like a zoom out where you kind of see like this like staircase, and then you also see like the shots of like the different paintings on the wall. But I think the film like very obviously portrays like the power of the house itself, and what what the house stands for.
Right. The film is called Saltburn. The house is such a big part of it. Oliver getting the house at the end is like the final win, right?
Yeah.
I guess like how did you interpret that ending of him kind of eliminating the Catton family and then him having dominion over Saltburn?
Well, we'll talk about the nakedness then,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Because I think obviously that's one of the scenes that everybody was talking about, and for me, I think it was fitting for him to be fully naked because he was able to finally reveal himself to kind of like ground himself as living and existing and being part of the house.
Right.
He was like literally naked himself. Like this is his flesh.
Right.
That is both desired and feared.
Yeah, absolutely. So nakedness as like finally an unmasking of Oliver, who has like been performing the whole time. I'm also thinking of nakedness in terms of like because you mentioned that an analogy Oliver made to the Cattons as like dogs who are vulnerable and like have had no natural predators and are thus like vulnerable. So in a way, it's like being naked is also being like completely vulnerable, right, to like whatever violence. So it's like now Oliver is not fearful of anything anymore at that point, right? That nakedness perhaps shows that too.
He was also doing like fun dancing, like like the actor did really great in the dancing sequence. But I think he was also showing like some poses of strength. Like I just remember he did very specific poses right before the dancing, like when he was like in the door frame, that I think it was like nakedness but with power. And I think it just speaks to Oliver and kind of like the trope of the monster, that we both desire it and fear it at the same time, and that's why we're so interested in these type of stories.
Totally, not wanting to be pursued by the monster, and then perhaps if the price of that is becoming the monster, so be it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I guess my other question is the year, the time of 2006. I feel like and I don't know if it's just because of like the social media like younger Gen Z crowd and how they're interpreting the movie, but I do feel like it was like self-consciously very retro, like I feel like the way Felix was dressed or is very evocative of like the early 2000s, let's say, which maybe like to me and you was like not that long ago, but to like younger generations who are watching this, maybe it is.
Well, they were reading Harry Potter, and I feel like that's not a thing that we do anymore.
I know, it's very dated. Yeah, no,
because I was like, okay,
nostalgic.
like because you remember when everybody was reading Harry Potter, and now we know better.
I know, right? Now it's been ruined.
I know. She who shall not be named.
For real,
but I was also kind of interested in the fact that like this is a family of readers. Like I don't know, like I think obviously like Fennell is like drawing on like these stories, these metaphors, these symbols to craft the film. But I just like don't believe like, okay, like they had the party, Midnight Summer's Dream theme for the party. They read Harry Potter. They were talking about like a few authors that kind of like reflect the film. But I don't know, it's just like shocked by how many references to reading is within this family, just because I don't buy it, but at the same time I do see what it contributes to the film, like the retroness of like, oh my god, they're talking about Harry Potter.
Right. It must just be like this snobby like British aristocrat thing. Yeah. One of the kind of I think big turning points of the movie was when Felix finds out Oliver is not like this working class kid from this like tough family whose like dad died, and his mom is like an alcoholic, you know what I mean? And we like visit Oliver in his home, which is like very cute and very quaint and very middle class, right? And he has a sister he hasn't talked about. What do you make of that entire like fiction Oliver set up and like where he actually comes from?
And I think we're able to get more of this when we get the reveal of he's been planning this whole time. Like we saw that, like he planned the bicycle meet cute. I'll call it a meet cute. Right. And I think it demonstrates how Oliver perceived Felix. Felix, he saw him, like, we see a shot of like Oliver looking at him and looking at Felix talking with his group of friends. So he kind of knew what type of narrative he needed to establish in order to have Felix desire Oliver. But for me, like, what's like stuck out to me about that scene in Oliver's home is just how normative like the family was. Like, it's like mom and pop. The mom had cooked for them. Like, it's just like the domesticity of that scene is like glaring, which again is like a complete contrast to the story that Oliver had created for Felix. And kind of like to segue onto this, like, I did want to talk about like the queerness of the film itself. Just because, like, I think very often, particularly like in contemporary representations of queerness, usually it's like a very visible LGBT progress, equality, whatever. Oh, Pride Month.
That's perfect timing.
For Pride Month. Well, I think
it's gonna air like many months later.
But listeners, we're speaking on like the second or third day of Pride Month.
Yes.
Yay, gay marriage. But I mentioned this just because I really appreciate that the film has like a queerness that is kind of like understated, particularly with Oliver, like being just like this like seductive figure that, you know, like he doesn't necessarily...
Felix?
Oh, Felix.
I was like, Oliver's
yeah.
devil.
Yeah.
In some ways, I guess, but yeah.
And there's some points where I think Felix was kind of like hinting or alluding to doing things with Oliver, but then he would like switch immediately. But I don't know, like, I appreciated the fact that like the queerness is just there and it doesn't need to be like I am gay type of movie, or I am bi, or I am pan. So that is something that I appreciated, but I know like maybe some people might critique it and be like, no, like it's just teasing queerness. But I actually appreciate it. Like, it's just a homoerotic film, and I appreciate that for it.
Totally, yeah. And I guess in terms of like how desire is portrayed in this movie, I think that's one of the things I actually really liked about it, because it's a very intimate like camera that like looks at Felix specifically, right? We see like the hairs on his temples. We'll see like his throat when he gulps. We'll see like sweat on his skin. I think that is probably like one of the more effective things that the film does is kind of capture Oliver's desire for Felix and Felix's just general desirability, right? In this very universal way, right? And I guess have you read stuff like Brideshead Revisited or like seen? I feel like there is that like strain of like homoeroticism in British, and I don't know much about it, so I'm not going to say any more than just this. But there is like that strain of the homoerotic in British films and British literature as well, especially I think because like the university was this space where it was like just young men at the time, like before. It was also a space where people of different classes were starting to kind of intermingle. Like I'm thinking of Brideshead Revisited in particular, and it's this like kind of upwardly mobile middle-class young man who goes, befriends an aristocrat, etc. But yeah, just like thinking of the space of the university as this place where like queerness is allowed to an extent. I obviously like in the early 20th century it was a little bit different. But I think it is definitely like taking that tradition and like bringing it into the 21st century for sure. Yeah.
And it's like the schoolboys at Oxford.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And it's also an interesting thing. And I mean, recently, like the other queer film that I think of alongside Saltburn in terms of its unstated queerness would be Challengers.
Okay. Yeah.
And just because again, like actually,
or like matter of fact kind of queerness.
Yeah. Where, and even then in Challengers, like the sex act itself never happens, but it happens in the court when they're playing tennis.
Or
like,
when eating. Yeah.
Or, oh yeah, the eating. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, but Challengers, so I hope somebody does Challengers.
I know, right?
Yeah. That was the other like fun.
We're at it, yeah. We're gonna influence someone to pick it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but it's like an interesting thing where again, like at least I am enjoying like these type of films where again it's not just like the coming out trope of most queer representations.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like, okay, cool, this is just part of the narrative. It's like a big aspect, but there's not like this coming out scene where it's like, oh, this is happening.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's like a great like move toward normalization in like film and in representation for sure. Yeah. And I guess we're gonna like start wrapping up toward the last leg of the conversation, but is there any kind of final thing you want to say about Saltburn before we wrap up?
I want to meet Elspeth in real life.
I know, right? I feel like there might be.
That's true.
There are probably
Elspeths in the
Elspeths.
world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, we'll have to work on that. Get to England, step one. Yeah.
Make it happen.
Yeah. But yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ruben. And thank you to our listeners and viewers. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you all. Bye.